Michael Jackson's Thriller album.
Stories in the Room.
This is Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room. Join film composer Anthony Marinelli, who programmed synthesizers for 7 songs on Thriller, and A&R veteran film producer Stephen Ray, who assisted Quincy Jones and was in the studio every day with Quincy and Michael.
Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room.
I'm Anthony Marinelli with my longtime close friend and co-host, Stephen Ray, bringing you the real stories directly from the talented people in the room with us during the making of Thriller, the greatest selling album of all time. It's hard not to think of Michael as anything other than highly gifted, supernaturally talented, but when I ask you what did you learn from him, you went into the whole thing about preparation. So somebody that has all that is still willing to put that kind of level of work in to the detail level that you're talking about, every rhythm, every background, every ad-lib prepared.
That had a better work ethic than Michael. And if you knew Michael and you knew what he did every Sunday of his life, what he did was typically, I mean, if it was deadline time and we were in the studio, we'd be in the studio. Even when we were in the studio, he would do a juice fast. And if he was at home, he would be in the room above the garage, and he would dance. And he would dance, and he would dance the whole entire day. He would keep himself and his body in tune. Now, it is my belief that dancers and choreographers are not normal, mortal individuals. They feel and relate to music differently.
Yes.
I mean, they feel things. They cannot prevent their body from moving. And Michael was one of those people because the way he felt music was so, I mean, when you start, basically, if you start when you're 6 years old and you dedicate your life to being the best that you can be.
Yeah, he was a rhythm machine. I mean, he really was. I remember very clearly doing the recording of the record. He would go out in the lobby, and right there, not on the carpet, but on the hardwood, lobby right outside the desk there, and he would dance. He would take 20 minutes to a half an hour if you were changing reels or doing anything with the multi-tracks, and we had downtime. That's what he would do.
Yeah.
He would go dance, and he would bring his big, blaster, and he would dance to other people's up-tempo songs, other artists.
Yeah.
And so his commitment to, because, they're vocalists, and that when they perform on stage, sometimes they dance, sometimes they don't. He was constantly rhythmically in sync with himself, so he didn't go outside of that person when he was in the studio. Because that was that was a part of his whole, to your point, that's who he was as an artist. He was a singer, songwriter, dancer.
Yeah.
And he didn't separate those things even when he was in a recording studio. And he was always moving when he did the vocals.
He danced all the time.
Moving around, and you can hear him breathing rhythmically. Yeah. That's why I call him the rhythm machine. And I remember being at the house with him sometimes on the weekend, and we would just be sitting around, and he'd just be in the kitchen with Catherine dancing.
But he also studied like the masters. I remember talking to him about
studied
Fred Astaire. He was a huge fan.
James Brown, Astaire,
Gene Kelly.
Yeah, Gene Kelly, Sammy.
Everyone.
Yeah.
If they danced, Michael studied them.
Yeah.
If they created music, Michael studied them.
Yes.
If they made films, Michael studied them. If they were industrialists who were successful, he studied them. If they were inventors, he studied them. He studied everybody who achieved a degree of success. In fact, one of the things Michael said to me was, he said, when they were working, and he said to me, Thomas Edison is somebody who's never gotten his credit that's due him. And I said, and I grew up, reading Tom Edison's biography, and at one time I was a tourist, and we toured his Florida home, and I actually got to sit in Thomas Edison's chair at his desk. And it was like, oh my God. It was like, I was a little kid, I was 12 years old. That was like an inspirational. So when he said Thomas Edison, I said, I can't agree with you more. He said, think about it. Think about all of the inventions of Thomas Edison's. Think of the electric light bulb, moving pictures, sound recording. The entire entertainment industry is based on those three discoveries. Now, Thomas Edison may not have been the very originator of each one, but he is the person that effectively brought them to the forefront, because the thing that Michael appreciated most that Thomas Edison created, he said, and his best invention of all was the research laboratory, which is why Michael always considered the studio a laboratory where you explore sound, you explore music. He had a quote from Thomas Edison on the wall of the Havenhurst studio.
Yeah, you sure did.
That basically, it was a long quote. Boiled down, it was success comes from 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, because this represented basically this is what Michael learned. And he would learn these different things from these different people and say there's a teaching moment there. There's a lesson to be learned. And this is what my whole life has been, is being able to work with people and have all of these conversations with Michael about people who were inspirational, and in some cases with Quincy and Bruce. And it's like every time I'm doing something and I'm with someone and there's this creative thing, there's a moment to learn from what's happening. Maybe something falls into place that you didn't expect, or some mistake happens and you go, whoa, that's great. You just learned from something's an accident. That's a cool thing. I got to remember that in the future. This is like, to me, my whole life is a series of learning moments, and it's not stopping, because I'm pushing ahead in what I want to pursue and in music, and I want to enjoy life.
It's very interesting, though, what you said about Michael, because I think in the legacy of music, it's not always about like reinventing a new scale, a new set of notes to work with, or something that's completely new, but it's like going back and then reassembling what was before you. And that's like Edison was able to reel in a lot of this stuff. It's not necessarily, the art isn't always just creating something new for the sake of newness. It's reassembling what's there already and presenting views of life in different ways. And it's great that you said that about Michael, because that's kind of what musicians do. Because we have to look to the ones before us to learn style and rhythms. Comes from different places in the globe, comes from different time periods. And then the great musicians of our time assemble everything in a new way that came before. So it's like a new lens on it. But we're not like necessarily inventing something out of thin air. It's the same stuff, but we just make it come to life in a different way. So, and it takes work to do that. And
dedication.
You put Michael in a laboratory. And then, you kind of got to run.
Well, he always wanted
lab.
to hear something that hadn't been heard before. Just sounds, and then he would incorporate those into things that he would write, or rhythmic things. And it's like Quincy said when Quincy was studying with Madame Nadia Boulanger in Paris.
Yep.
There's 12 notes. And everybody has the same 12 notes, so you have to learn everything about how to use those 12 notes and everything that has come before you, so you have a basis, basically of a stepping off point. Because so often you can take something in terms of a reality and deconstruct it, and then build something. And when you do that topically in writing a song about something, maybe you have a new viewpoint about something that emotionally people haven't been exposed to that, and people react like, oh my God, that's like, I've never heard that expressed that way before. And Michael was very good in exploring those things too.
Well, there's only so many stories out there, and it's who's the storyteller. So, we want to hear Michael's story, but we're all telling the same story of humankind. There's, what is it, like six
every
stories
artist,
or something?
The beauty of it is every artist, the evolution of every artist is different because of their interpretation of those 12 notes. And Quincy talks about that, how they can be voiced, the thousands and thousands of ways to voice those 12 notes, and that you get into that when you study music theory, and you know that very well, Anthony. It's the evolution of, Thomas Edison was critical to the evolution of what became
technology.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but he was also very aware of the fact that he was doing things that would affect humanity.
As was Michael.
Michael was, at that point, I don't think Michael had quite as much of a, let's say, the viewpoint of humanity in as much as he did when he did We Are the World.
Join us for the next episode of Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room, with your hosts Anthony Marinelli and Stephen Ray. Watch our extended interviews on youtube.com/@StoriesInTheRoom. Audio-only interviews are available on all podcast networks. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok @StoriesInTheRoom. For the latest news and links, visit the website, storiesintheroom.com. This podcast is produced by Christian D. Bruun and David Wolf, recorded by Audivita Studios. Additional recording by Ben Rackless. Edited by Jay Spang and Sean Hedinger. Music by Anthony Marinelli and Stephen Ray.
Michael Jackson's Thriller album.
Stories in the room.